Alright, let's see if I can get through this recording session without crying, shall we? Amphibia is a series that forces you to ask difficult questions like, how did Brenda Song manage to last 21 years as a Disney Channel star without singing a song before this silly little frog show came along?
Bang! Move it to the groove till the music stops.
No, this scene doesn't count. It's still iconic, though. Normally for these videos, I craft a general thesis statement and ramble until I feel satisfied with my coverage of the topic, but that approach feels inadequate here because Amphibia doesn't need intensive interpretive analysis. The show speaks for itself, and I really enjoy what it has to say about topics like redemption and change, so that's what I'm going to talk about today. Nothing I say will be particularly insightful or mind-boggling. I just want to process my feelings about a really earnest piece of media, so let's ribbit, jump on in. God, I can't believe I just said that. Redemption is a common trope in entertainment today, with roots that can be traced all the way back to the biblical tale of Paul the Apostle. We like stories that say it's never too late to be a better person. It's a reassuring message that has universal appeal because we're all flawed individuals. The problem with this trope is that redemption arcs are rarely done well. My personal definition of redemption comes mostly from the Buffy the Vampire Slayer universe.
Redemption is hard.
It is the process of actively making better choices and learning how to forgive yourself. That's why most people don't accept redemption arcs where a character sacrifices their life. It feels cheap because they only made one hard choice, and being better requires consistency. It's easy to point to Zuko as the golden standard for redemption storylines, but words cannot describe how tired I am of Avatar: The Last Airbender discourse. Every time I start a new show, someone tries to bestow the title of the next Zuko onto a character, and I groan each time I hear that. Comparing apples and oranges is an exercise in futility. Let's all just appreciate the diversity of fruits. Speaking of fruity,
I knew it!
Sasha Waybright is one of my favorite characters from Amphibia. She is middle school energy incarnate, complete with the sass, the charm, and the ability to render a self-confident, sentient being into an insecure mess within seconds.
Hey, I'm her bestie too. I guess that makes me your bestie-in-law. Does it?
Her redemption arc compels me because she's not atoning for severe war crimes like most cartoon characters these days. She's just a manipulative 13-year-old girl who learns that her behavior is toxic and unhealthy. As someone who was once a preteen girl, that's a really powerful thing to see put on screen.
Why would I trust you? It wasn't just Toad Tower, Sasha. You've been pushing me around my whole life. I know.
It's implied at the end of Froggy Little Christmas that her parents are either separated or divorced, and this information helps contextualize her actions throughout the show. She couldn't control the things happening in her home life, so she exerted control over her friends due to her fear of losing them, too. This reading makes the end of Reunion all the more devastating.
We're not on the rocks. We're on the fucking edge of a cliff.
Even after their fight, Anne is holding on to Sasha for dear life, but Sasha doesn't see that. She sees someone she loves with a new family and support system, and the inadequacies she's internalized tell her to let go.
Maybe you're better off without me.
These inadequacies are proven false not even 2 seconds later when Grime leaps into action to save her. Their father-daughter dynamic is one of the many, many highlights from this series, and I get excited every time they're on screen together.
How did you even walk?
They inspire and motivate one another, but they both reach a point of personal stagnation in Beryl's Warhammer. Though she manages to convince the convened Toads to rebel against the throne, Sasha's selfishness destroys her friendships with Percy and Braddock. Grime writes this moment off as his subordinates reaching their personal limits, but this event sticks with Sasha, and it foreshadows the events of True Colors when Anne reaches her own breaking point.
Anne, I know you're upset, but just— No! I'm done listening to you. I'm done trusting you. You're a horrible person, and I am done being friends with you.
Whether intentional or not, I really like that we never see Percy or Braddock again. They're briefly mentioned at the end of the finale, but Sasha doesn't get real closure with them, and I think that's really interesting. We aren't owed apologies from the people who hurt us. The best we can do is wish them well and hope they find their own form of peace. And if we wind up getting that apology somewhere down the line, then that's just an added bonus.
Goodbye, Sash. We hope you pull it off. We really do.
Sasha makes her first redemptive choice in Turning Point. She's reached rock bottom, but instead of abandoning Wortwood in their hour of need, she defends the town her best friend loved with Grime at her side.
Sorry I'm late.
Grimesy!
I have done nothing wrong. Ever.
I know this, and I love you.
Sasha becomes the leader of the rebellion, but she doesn't hesitate to abdicate that title when Anne and the Planters return to Amphibia. There are probably people who think Anne and Sasha didn't talk enough about their problems in Season 3B, But I disagree. I think their sparring session in Sasha's Angels addresses most of these complaints. Though Anne appreciated Sasha's repentance, she didn't fully forgive her because she wasn't yet privy to all the ways Sasha had changed. A similar scene plays out when Sasha fights to save Marcy from the Core in All In. The Core is only aware of the person Sasha was, not the person she's grown to be. And this makes Sasha's grand declaration of change genuinely empowering.
I am not that person anymore.
Change is the most important word from that assessment because Amphibia is, at its core, a show about the inevitability of change. Marcy didn't want to move away. Sasha didn't want to correct her behavior. Anne didn't want to apply herself. Change is terrifying, but the impermanence of a thing does not render it insignificant. Rather, the fleeting moments we have are meaningful because they can't last. Thus, the Core's immortality makes it a fitting final antagonist for the Calamity Trio because it rejects the ultimate form of change, death.
These conquerors, with their arrogance and greed, created an unnatural thing that does not sleep and will not die.
Anne's willingness to meet her own demise literally impresses God enough for her to be named next in line for godhood. Also, is it just me, or does the fact that God is a cat make a lot of things click in an existential sense? It's as if the earth is a ball of yarn and God is in a really playful mood right now. I'm only able to process plot details like this now because the rest of the finale made me sob like a baby. Before The Hardest Thing aired, I had a few issues with Amphibia as a show. The pacing was hit or miss, the first half of Season 3 bored me, and at times, I felt like the show was rehashing episode concepts that I'd seen a dozen times before. However, much like Sprig in True Colors, all of these complaints went right out the window when I finished watching the credits roll. You see, Amphibia belongs to a genre of adventure cartoons that have been incredibly popular these past few years, and genres are a lot like a piano keyboard. They only have a limited number of different notes, so originality doesn't come from things like pitch or archetypes. It comes from the arrangement and execution of these pitches and archetypes, and the melody Amphibia crafts is lovely. Creator Matt Brawley has described the show as an ode to past friendships, and I can't think of a more fitting description than that. I didn't realize just how much this show meant to me until it ended. I started watching when Marcy at the Gates aired, which was smack dab in the middle of the unholy abomination that was the year 2020. I went back and watched all of Season 1 on Disney Plus and saw each new episode week to week from there on out. During this period of time, I was trudging through my junior year of college and recovering from the end of a very toxic friendship. As someone who doesn't have many positive experiences with romance, I put a lot of value on friendship, and it was refreshing to find a show that celebrated it.
So do you have a boyfriend back home?
I also suffer from intense anxiety and succumb to stress more often than I'd like, but Amphibia always finds a way to soothe me. On nights where I can't sleep, I put it on because it comforts me, and eventually, it helps me doze off. I cried for a long time when I realized Anne and Sprig would never see each other again. Heck, I teared up when I wrote this portion of the script. I'm used to friendships ending on bad terms, but there's a real beauty to Amphibia's finale. The catchphrase, "spraying against the world," appears as early as episode 2 of the series, but it takes on a whole new meaning as Anne walks through that final portal. Their love for each other transcends the dimensional barriers between worlds, and that's tremendously poignant. This show certainly isn't perfect, but I'm always in a forgiving mood when media is earnest, and you don't get much more earnest than Amphibia.
Bottom line is, even if you see him coming, you're not ready for the big moments. No one asked for their life to change, not really, but it does. So what are we, helpless? Puppets? No. The big moments are gonna come, you can't help that. It's what you do afterwards that counts. That's when you find out who you are.
All this to say, I'm really glad the final twist wasn't that Anne was secretly the female clone of Hop Pop this whole time. Yes, I'm still bitter about how the DuckTales reboot ended. Fight me, Internet!